Hello people, it's Butterfly. How are you? I've been making a lot fewer videos recently, and I know that. I mean, my life has gotten pretty busy, and I've really kind of come to like doing YouTube videos, mostly because I'm plugged into a very tarot, spiritually kind of, great community, and I love my people. I really do. So I miss kind of that interaction and that feedback with the comments and the interaction we have with lives. But suffice to say, my life has gotten busy, and it'll be busy for a little less than a year. Oh, it's you, my dog. Sorry, I hear little sounds. She was investigating what was in the box beside me. Anyway, so I miss you, but thing is, I'm going at my own pace, and I'm just being true to my feeling. And I know you're all really cool with that. It's not like there's a shortage of YouTube videos to look at. So, but I know that we like having our connection as well. Thing is, yeah, I've taken on some additional responsibilities, so to speak, and I also have a reading group that I really like. My reading group and I are going through this book. We went through like 2 chapters last week, Help for the Helper. I explained a bit of that. Of course, I'm a bit of a geek. I'm a bit of a geek. So I also have been in my journaling. I have a separate journal, and I've been going through this book, which is tremendously therapeutic. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And I've featured it before kind of on this channel. It's by Troy Love. And if you write to his website, he does respond. He's really great. He's a social worker. So it's www.troylove. Sorry, let's try that again. www.troylove.com. If you want to write to him, that's where it is. Right there. But this is his book, and it says, Finding Peace, a workbook on healing from loss, neglect, rejection, abandonment, betrayal, and abuse. And who can't relate to that? Well, everybody can relate to that. Of course we can. So I'm going through the exercises. There's plenty of room in here to do a lot of writing. So a lot of the struggle for me is, do I write this in my journal or do I write this in my book? So I've been kind of talking to myself, and I've decided I'm just going to write in the book, because what do we do as people who love to do journaling? We buy old books and we tear them apart and we cut them up and we do all kinds of journaling with the whatever of the books from thrift stores, right? So I've been letting go of that, trying to keep books all pristine and unwritten and writing in a journal aside so that I could sell it at the best price, that's gone out the window, at least for this book. This book has me written all over it, and I'm really enjoying it. So I don't know if I'm going to cover the contents of what I'm writing in that book in my channel. I may, because that would make some, really, really great discussions once I've mastered the material. I could probably lead some really good discussions on a live chat. Anyways, right now I don't know what I'm going to be doing with this, or if I'm going to be touching on it in my channel at all. But I am recommending this book for if you want to, heal some trauma, and just nobody gets through life unscathed, right? Nobody. So if you want to heal your little boo-boos that you didn't even know you had, and some of them that you have and you don't know what to do with them, that's a good place to start. So we're going through this book, Wicca for the Beginners, and sometimes I skip chapters and sometimes I don't. But this weekend I wanted to do some lives, and I wanted to do some videos and stuff, and it's Sunday night and it's 8:45. And generally what I do at this point is I just kind of start slowing down and hit the hay. But my sleep has been disrupted for a couple of weeks now. And literally, like, I'm going to bed after midnight. Friday night, I ended up going to bed closer to 2 a.m. And it's all kind of work related. And of course, Saturday morning I was able to get up at my own leisure, but I'm used to getting up at 10 to 6 every day. So your body doesn't really know it's Saturday or Sunday. So needless to say, 5 or 6 hours of sleep at night with a few naps on the weekends, it just ain't cutting it for me. So I've had some sleep deprivation that's been accumulating. And so some things have had to slip by the wayside. And some of those things that have slipped by the wayside is stuff like cutting the lawn, laundry is less frequent, cleaning stuff that should be cleaned ongoingly is a little less frequent than it should be. And then there's YouTube, which is something that is a passion and a love of mine. Because I end up spending a lot of hours doing the things that I like doing in my hobbies. And then, I'll do a little clip on that on YouTube. So when I'm spending less time doing those things that I love, I really, that's basically the short end of it. The long story is what I just gave you. But the short end is I'm feeling very, very tired. But now on Sunday night, this weekend, I've been able to catch up with sleep, finally, and some laundry. And 2/3 of my lawn has been cut until my lawnmower pooched and said, that's it, it's begging for retirement. And then I get to start all over again tomorrow, Monday morning. And that's when I start back again for 5 days. I'll be getting about 6 hours of sleep when really I need 9. So yeah, that's my violin. It's, I designed my life by choice. These are all things that are work related, and I have chosen to be in the position that I'm at. So I own that. I create my own reality, and I own that. But at the moment, this is the thing that I'm doing. So anyways, without any further ado, and just for future notice, you can probably usually skip about 7 or 8 minutes of my intro before I get into the potatoes of my, the lentils and the potatoes of my, whatever I'm going to be talking about. So again, Fundamentals of Philosophy and Practice, Wicca for Beginners by Thea Sabin. We left off last time, I was on the tail end of chapter 7, I believe. Chapter 8. I was on the tail end of chapter 8, Tools, Toys, and Altars. And I had just finished talking about the Book of Shadows on a live discussion. So I'm going to finish chapter 8 right now on page 145 and read about Wiccan altars. Yeah, we're going to make it up as we go along there. See if I'm going to complete the whole chapter, because there's a bit at the end I'll let you know about. Okay, so Wiccan altars. Wiccans seem to love their altars, whether it's because of their devotion to the gods or their devotion to knickknacks or both, we'll never know. But either way, altars are a place for Wiccans to express their faith, to do their spiritual work, store their ritual paraphernalia, and or channel their inner Martha Stewart or Christopher Lowell. A Wiccan altar can be as simple as a small shelf with a pine cone and a candle on it, or as elaborate and full table as cloth, candles, incense, flowers, ritual tools, and statues. Wiccans use altars as decorative and devotional spaces around their homes and gardens, and also in ritual. For the purposes of this chapter, a devotional altar is one that is set up permanently in the home or garden, and a ritual altar is one that is used only in a particular ritual circle. The next heading is the surface. There are no rules about how big, small, fancy, or simple a Wiccan altar has to be, so you can create one out of whatever suits you and speaks to you. I have seen altars made on end tables, coffee tables, shelves, filing cabinets, sewing tables, dressers and desktops, milk boxes, boards, flat rocks, small mounds of soil, garden stepping stones, TV trays, fireplace mantles, old trunks, cedar chests, plate rails, refrigerator tops, wall nooks, and even an old tombstone. There's even, by the way, if you look on YouTube, there's a number of people who've had their travel altars displayed on their videos. So travel altars are really cool. They have even small little mini things like with those Altoid tins, like a lozenge sort of a tin. They'll put little altars in there, and the candles are so small. Everything's miniature, so they'll use like birthday candles, birthday cake candles, and stuff like that, just so that they have a little version of whatever they want for when, whenever they want to pull out some ritual, do some ritual. I kind of just take a few things, put them in my backpack, and go hiking. So I don't really have a set kind of a travel altar. Most of the time I end up forgetting stuff, and it doesn't really matter because you don't really need anything with you anyway. But I do bring a couple of favorite things with me in a backpack, usually in a Tupperware so it doesn't shake around the bottom of my backpack. And there you go. That's what I take. The tombstone. What? Hi, baby. My dog is coming to... You want to come and say hi? Come here. What? I love you, my pooch. I do. Okay, let me read. The tombstone had a typo in it, so it had never been used to mark a grave. If you... You want to come and say hi? Here, come up. Come on up. What? I'm trying to read a book. Will you come on so they can see you? Come on. They're gonna think I'm talking to myself. I know you think I'm talking to myself. Come here. Up. Come on. Oh, yes, I know you big suck. Come and say hello. I love you. I love you. You got some spittins all over your face. You know I love you. Yeah. Okay. You want to sit here? I'm going to read to you. Oh, yeah, thanks. That's a love. Okay. All right, so tombstone had never been used, and she's just kind of upcycling it, I guess is the term. If you are creating a devotional altar, it's best if you can find a small table or the top of a bookcase. But if you don't have the cash or space for these, that's okay. You can use any flat surface if you need to, assuming it's easy to clean and meditate in front of you. I'm really kind of liking the old, when you go to like a thrift store and you get, the utensils are put in a big wooden box. When you lift the box, all the utensils would have had those places where you place the forks, and then they're all separated, and then inside is kind of all velvety or some kind of a cloth in there. And sometimes I've gotten lucky. I got 2 different wooden boxes that way. And that's kind of like not an altar that I would be traveling with, but I do keep some very special things that are in there. So what you can do is you just take out those little holders for all the utensils that separate all the holders, that separate all the utensils. You just yank that part out, and you're just left with an empty box. So that might be an inexpensive, really lovely, creative project for you. And then when you close the box, it's a nice wooden surface that is about 1 foot by 2 feet wide. That gives you like an altar space. I like mine. That's a really lovely place. And then you can slide it under your bed, or if you have to be discreet about things, or if you don't want to kind of advertise your space, you just slide it underneath a space, like underneath a shelf or whatever, and all you need is a couple of inches, and it's fairly discreet, right? So if you have a few extra dollars, consider scrounging around thrift stores for an old end table. These tend to be reasonably inexpensive. If the one you find is ugly, and they often are, or they wouldn't have been relegated to the store, you can paint over it or cover it with an inexpensive cloth. So old scars are really, really great for that too, or old tablecloths. I like the lacy kind of the granny section where everything has to be shabby chic, and you throw that on top of an old table, and that's quite nice too. I think I've shown you mine upstairs when I showed you my Beltane altar, and the way that was, oh no, my lace were actually being washed at the time. Anyway, I'll have to show you that. Well, basically, lace is a big thing here in this house. So these tend to be reasonably inexpensive. If the one you find is ugly, and they often are, so you blah, 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 we'll cover it with a cloth. If you have pets and you are creating a devotional altar, you will also want to consider what we call the cat factor. Cats and some dogs, and most parrots, are irresistibly drawn to unsteady surfaces full of fragile knickknacks. If you have a curious feline or canine in the house, consider building your devotional altar either up high or on a very stable surface, preferably both. What I like to do is just make sure that any things that is movable is tucked into a box. The TV tray is not recommended for this situation. If you are creating a ritual altar, you will want something that can be taken down or stowed or put aside when it's not in use. I've found that trunks and chests are great for this because you can store your ritual tools inside the surface for the altar during ritual. It's also perfectly okay to use an everyday altar or surface in ritual. I know plenty of Wiccans who move their coffee tables into the circle space for ritual and then put them back in the living room when they're done. Stability is important for the ritual altar too, especially if you will be moving it around or you will have burning candles on it. So I think I've explained at one time that when I was, like I've gone through different setups for ritual, even around this dining room table where I'd be walking around and stuff, and I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or lazy or I can just kind of picture it in my head. A lot of the, going to the quarters and moving around, a lot of the physical movement where you have to get up and move on your feet, I basically do it from a stationary place. Most of the time it's because I'm in a room in my home and there isn't a whole lot of place to move around once I'm all set up. When I'm out in nature, though, I think I had explained at one time what I do is I sort of sit and rotate. It doesn't sound very nice, but that's what I do. I just sit and rotate. And then I face the corners. There's different ways of doing it. I should really put my finger. Surface during ritual. It's perfectly okay to use an everyday table or surface in ritual. I know plenty of Wiccans who move their coffee tables, and there you go. Okay. So if you'll be moving it around, I'll have to cut that part out because there you go. Covering and paraphernalia. Once you have found a surface, decide if you would like to cover it. Most Wiccan altars have altar cloths of some kind, but I've also seen some altars that have been painted with magic symbols, stars and moons or spirals. If you want to use a tablecloth, you can buy a new tablecloth, find used ones at thrift stores and garage sales, or in your own drawers, use an extra piece of fabric left over from sewing projects or bought new, or scarves and sarongs. Sarongs are really nice. I have some sarongs that I bought back when I was a size 6. That was like 15 years ago and 60 pounds ago. And 2 children ago. I've never fit back into those sarongs the same way, but I still can't bring myself to do anything with these sarongs. I just love them so much. And I have like 4 or 5 of them. I don't want to put them in the windows as curtains because they might get sun bleached, and plus it kind of looks a little cheesy. I don't want to put them on the wall. I don't want to put them on an altar cloth, like as an altar cloth, because they might get wax on them and get dirty. And yet I still have them. So I have found a use for them. Now that I have 3 hand drums, they wrap my hand drums and they come with me, and so they have a place in ceremony for my drums. But when you end up having a collection of cloths, or special cloths for each and every purpose that you have, with your paraphernalia. So So yeah, you'll just have to play around with things, and over the years you're going to find your own comfort with various materials that you pick up along the way. But the main thing is, don't go out and start paying like a pack of money for stuff, because it's not worth it. You just wait, and when you're meant to have it, it will come to you. You will see it, you will recognize it, and that's all. You just take what comes to you, and when you need it, it'll be there. You need to understand that part of it. I think the main thing is, although you can use like no tools at all, I would say an almost indispensable tool is journaling. And it may or may not actually have to include stuff like everybody else has, like the creed and the read and the, every other thing about male and female and moon phases and all that stuff. I mean, a lot of that stuff is really, really important to know. But if you carry around a book, like this one or another one it has all the basics that you want, once you have those basic stuff, the journal that I'm kind of talking about is the one that you're going to write in. You're going to write your process in every day, like the thoughts that come to your mind, the feelings that come to you, the messages that come to you when you're when you're in ritual or when you're in meditation. Those sort of spiritual messages that you receive, those are the things you want to be writing down in your journal. So whether you call that a book of mirrors or a book of reflections or a journal or whatever it is, that's what's really important as a tool. So those are the kind of stuff you can get at the bookstore. You just get a basic, like this, just a basic sort of a pack of paper, or this one here, which I know I'm going to have to, I won't show you the front because it has information on it, but just basic information. And those are the important tools. Okay. So covering and paraphernalia. So she's gone on to talk about the covering, which is the things that the tablecloths and stuff like that, the sarongs, and then I went on a tangent. I want to skip a little bit and move down to this paragraph. So now that you have this great surface, what do you put on it? Again, there are no hard and fast rules, but Wiccans, altars, often have candles, statues, flowers, stones, feathers, shells, incense, and incense burners, and or the Wiccan's ritual tools on them. Sometimes they include food or beverages associated with a particular sabbath or deity. Remember to change these periodically if they're not in some sort of packaging, lest they increase the cat factor, bug factor, or slimy mold factor. Okay, so take them out of their package and let them air out, I guess. A lot of the things that kind of find their way onto my into my house and into my spaces, books like this. These are more kind of from the bookstore. Just white paper, and they end up pressing all the flowers that I find in the precious few months that we have where there's actually greenery around. And that makes its way into my journaling, and that makes its way into, this is from an umbrella tree. And so that way I have a little bit of nature during the 8 months of what seems to be winter here, the non-growing season. So as I mentioned, here, I'm going to show you here. This is the diagram that she gives as an altar setup. So here you have the representation of the goddess, the representation of the god. You have incense in a bowl of salt, likely, and then you have the goblet. You have a candle here. You have a candle here. Now, on my altar, you'd have like 4 candles for the 4 cardinal directions, but here you have a representation probably of the god and goddess, which sort of doubles up because you actually have statues as well. This would probably be salt here, and this would probably be the water because of the west. Have a bowl of water. There you have the athame, and here you have more of a working kind of a bowling knife for working. Oh, and here you'd have a wand. This would be a wand here, which is usually some kind of a stick that you've picked up along the way and you've kind of taken a fancy to. Chopsticks, by the way, also make nice wands. And you can always dress it up as well because, if you do some beading, I do some beading, and it's really quite easy. Just sometimes to kind of make it attached to the wand, if you're wondering. Some people will use leather, but I use felt or cloth. The felt actually gives it a bit of sponginess to the layer that's in between the stick and the beading, and it just holds the beading really well, and it's kind of it's not an animal product, so that's why I use it. So as I mentioned in chapter 7, if you're building a devotional altar to a specific deity, you'll want to find items that correspond to him or her. For example, I'll have an altar for the Morrigan. The Morrigan's a big one, and I quite like the Morrigan. A Celtic warrior goddess. The surface is covered with a red cloth, and on it a candle in a red cauldron-shaped holder. A statue of the Morrigan, skull, feathers, and feet of a crow, a raven figurine, a coin with a wolf on it, my raven bracelet, and my cherry amber ritual bracelet. Wolves, crows, and ravens are the Morrigan's animals. And since she's a battle goddess, I figure she likes red. I don't include any flowers because the Morrigan isn't a flowery kind of girl. Yeah. Ritual altars often have decorative items on them, such as Indian corn or fall equinox Indian corn at the fall equinox, but it's more important that they contain the tools and materials necessary for the ritual itself. Often, these items are put on an altar in symbolic places. For example, the censer at the south edge of the altar because of its association with fire. However, sometimes it's much more important to have the items laid out so that they're easy to grab and use than it is to have them in the special places. So yes, you can put the censer at the south because it represents fire, but quite often the censer will also represent the east because it is air. The smoke is a representation of air. Also, if your altar is facing north, then the south part, so let's just say here. Let's just say your altar is facing north here, and here's your south part. Anything that you put here, whether you put a candle with a flame to represent the fire, or a censer if that's what you're doing, and you have to kind of reach over that fire to get to do any of your workings over here with your arms. So you want to make sure that you don't have any sleeves that are dangling in your way, and you may want to rearrange things on your altar so that you have a proper workspace here in front of you. That's my preference. So although once I'm done, I return things to be kind of centered and candles kind of be around, when I'm doing my actual working, most of the bottom layer here of the altar is actually empty. And sometimes I actually clear off. You saw how I have my altar set up upstairs, how I have 3 end tables. Well, sometimes I will put a few things on the edge here of the middle table, and everything else gets pushed onto the side table so that I have a proper working space. And then I have another kind of a lower kind of a table so that I can put my book. And sometimes I'm working out of my book and a textbook as well. So there's a lot of time that's spent there. You want to make sure that this is really comfortable, and you want to kind of think about how you want things laid out. And it's only by doing shorter versions of what kind of test runs where you're going to find what works for you and how comfortable you feel. You're going to find out how, how thick of a cushion you need to sit on, or what kind of a seating arrangement you need to have, or if you want to do it at a desk and not on the floor at all, because, just for comfort for while you're there. You don't want to be uncomfortable when you're trying to get, into your Zen space, right? All right, Pooch, I love you. Yes, you. I always kind of like lose my spot here, right? So often these items are put on altars in symbolic places. For example, the center of the south, the censer at the south edge because of the altar, because it's associated with fire. However, sometimes it's much more important to have the items laid out so that they're easy to grab and use than it is to have them in their special places. There is no right or wrong way to set up a ritual altar. The diagram here shows a simple altar setup. Feel free to use it and adapt it in whatever way suits you, or throw it out entirely. In this altar design, the altar is facing north. This is common in Wicca, although altars sometimes face one of the other directions. I put the athame on the right because I am right-handed and it's easier to grab there. And since the athame is used in a lot of in circles, so I want it handy. So the reason why she's mentioning that is, here's the athame here, right? So you're going to have, and usually anything that's on this side is kind of like male, and anything that's on this side is female, like the goblet is female. And I shouldn't say usually, basically, because there is no usual. You do you, and that's what is beautiful about this practice. It's completely customized. So you don't have to do things, the same as somebody else, for instance. The utility knife is on the left to balance the athame. So she likes things to be sort of symmetrical. The censer is in the middle, so it's less likely to be tipped over. The god, candle, and the statue are on the right because the god is the active principle, and as I mentioned earlier, the right hand is considered by some to be the active hand. The goddess statue and the candle are on the left because the goddess is the receptive principle. The water and salt are in the west and east purely for aesthetic balance. Water is west, but salt, earth, isn't east, it's north. So she has salted water, right? So I think I've explained that in a previous video. So if you have salted water, that is basically the water is west and salt is earth, which is north. And the incense would represent both fire and air. So the smoke is the air, and that represents east. And the fire, or the heat source of the incense, is the south. I put the chalice by the goddess statue and candle because it is I have to do this again. I put the chalice by the goddess statue and candle because it symbolizes her. Likewise for the wand and the god statue and candle. The broom doesn't go on the altar. Yeah. So, and that always depends too, because some people will have small brooms where they're just kind of clearing off space without actually touching the surfaces. But you can also do that with a feather. You can do that with your hand. Yeah. So yeah, if you have a great big broom, you're not going to put that on your space. Remember, you don't need all this stuff to do an effective ritual. Also, if you are a minimalist who abhors clutter, you don't have to put every tool on the altar. Most people don't use every tool in every ritual anyway. If you're a minimalist and you want to have a clear space, you might want to just put everything in some kind of a box, like I said, and as you need them, pull them out, use them, and put them back. And that way your space will always stay relatively clear. Consecrating tools. So that's the next heading. Now this is the part where I don't think I'm going to actually read this. This is more something that would be well understood with a demonstration. This would be kind of like reading to you a recipe, you know. You need so many of these things, you do this, You put your oven at 350 for so many, you know. Here she talks about consecrating tools, and then she goes through the technique of how to consecrate tools. So what you will need, which is the ingredients, you'll need a bowl and salt and water, and you'll need your censer and incense, you'll need your athame and some other ritual tools and a clean dry rag. And then she goes on to describe what you will do and what you will say. And she has it all in a stepwise thing. So take up the circle, and then ground, and then store in your newly consecrated tools in a safe, special place. So there's 21 steps in the book. I don't know if that's really something that you want me to read. It's certainly something that you can have at your disposal if you buy the book. But, you know, let me know what your comments, you know, are. If you have any kind of discussion, then definitely I can read it. I kind of want to sort of wet your whistle for the basics, and perhaps, you know, jump into another book as soon as I can. So yeah, I'm going to skip over that for now. The next chapter is chapter 9, and it talks about the Wiccan holidays and the Wheel of the Year. That is a topic that is talked about a lot on YouTube, and I know that I'm just kind of looking at these things, and they're very, very succinct. That kind of succinct information is widely available, so I don't know that it's really going to be terribly useful for the average person to sort of listen to me read that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this off here and then consider what else there is to be reading in here. Chapter 10 is called Putting It Together, Using What You've Learned. I haven't read this in about 2 years or so. I read it when it first came out. So this is performing a ritual, and it would be quite handy if you wanted to, for instance, know how to do some rituals. So now that you've learned about what sort of tools there are, she's teaching you in here how to put them together, what you would say, what you would do. So she talks about a black or white candle for each ancestor, and to call out specifically one candle for all of them. A cauldron with a kitty litter. She likes that with to hold the incense. So she kind of describes how to set things up that way pretty meticulously. Then she talks about, setting the mood with a CD player and some music that inspires you. Decorate it with something that is seasonal. And then she talks about a circle blessing, and she gives you some examples of circle blessings. So this is really pretty nice. If I were to give you some kind of a template or a demonstration on, circle, my absolute favorite sort of basic template is Dorothy Morrison. In her book, it's a green book, I think it's called The Craft. So I think I would probably, if you're interested in that, just write me a note down below, and I'd probably go through her template for that, because that's my absolute favorite one. So, but this book talks to you about everything kind of, clearly too. Like, you'd start out with a ritual bath, you'd cleanse first, and then you go through, what you might want to wear. Some people want to do ceremonial robes. Some people just wear whatever's comfortable. I certainly wear what's comfortable. That's what I do. But I wear something that's clean. And I've often done it just right out of the bath with clean pajamas, because after that it's my bedtime. So it's kind of my meditation time to kind of relax. It puts me into a relaxed mood. So that's what chapter 10 is about. And then, yeah, she's talking about what to say and so on with, light this candle for the God, Lord of the sun and grain, Lord of the hunt and underworld, Lord of the death and rebirth, and here is the night in my sacred Samhain circle. So she's talking about like a Samhain sort of a ritual. Now, chapter 11, I'm just kind of seeing if we're done with this or not. Chapter 11. So you're curious about magic. What is magic? She suggests to look up information about Aleister Crowley, which is always a good place to start. She talks here about the higher purpose. What is a spell? I think that is probably correspondences, 12 steps of a spell. I think this is actually a really good chapter to read some. And then she gives you a sample spell. So this could be really helpful to you. Here she says, what is a spell? When Wiccans explain what a spell is to non-Wiccans, they will sometimes say a spell is like a prayer. I disagree, although in both a prayer and a spell, you are making your desires known to the universe in the similarities end there. When you pray for something, you're asking God to help you achieve some goal. When you do a spell, you are telling the universe that you intend to bring about certain change, and you are putting the energy in motion to achieve that end. You may ask for help from a god or goddess in your spell, but it's really you who are bringing down the work and moving the energy behind your desired change. And that is the major difference between a spell and a prayer. So when you're talking to people in general, it's kind of like you want to sort of start and explain what it is. It's like a petition. That's, probably a better way to sort of explain it rather than a prayer. Most people will understand a prayer where you're asking for, please give me some goodness. I'd like to deserve it. I'm so unworthy, but please give me something. Any breadcrumbs will do. That's kind of what it often feels like. And this deity knows best, so if you don't get it, it's because, well, you don't, best not to have it. Whereas when you're doing a spell, it is basically saying, look, I am connecting with the universe, and I am bringing this into my reality. I acknowledge that anything that happens, I am responsible for, and so you're tuning into your own ability to create things in your reality. And so it is quite different in that way, because it's not like you have a higher power to kind of go to. You are plugged into the power, and you're part of that cycle of energy. So that is kind of different. So yeah, I think that's what we're going to do. Is next time we're going to go and read the first little bits of chapter 11, because it does talk about spell magic and stuff. I may or may not go towards the end where she's, the last couple of pages, last 4 or 5 pages or so, where she's actually giving you a sample spell. That again becomes something that is better done in demonstration. But I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to leave it off there, and next time you come in, I'm going to look at chapter 11 with you. And I'm really looking forward to getting into a next book too, because I don't stay with any book for very long, so I'm kind of getting itchy to get into something else. Anyway, yeah, it was really nice to spend some time with you, and I'm glad that you came. What else can I say? If you have any questions, please leave them down below. And I know I haven't been spending very much time doing YouTube. I certainly have been neglecting the tarot aspect of my channel, which I don't really want to do. I do still have a tarot kind of a contest going. I think to date I only have 2 entries, simply because I haven't been promoting it tremendously well. But it's called #MakeMyOwnDeck400. And I will pull the winner once I reach 400. And right now I think I'm at 350 something. So yeah, maybe the next couple of videos I should kind of look at promoting that, so that you can get on the wagon and start making your own deck as well. Okay? Take care. Have a great evening, and I'll see you soon.